All right, Dr. John Douillard, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, before we jump in, obviously, I want to do just a bit of an introduction, even though you probably do not need one. But I was kind of touching on your bio just a little bit, and it's probably more impressive than I even realized. But you specialize in Ayurvedic medicine. So we will jump into everything that entails, but it's what, more than 40 years of experience as a practitioner at this point? Yes.
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 Yeah. Been a long run.
So
Yeah.
more than 7 books you've written, including Body, Mind, and Sport, which we'll get into because that's kind of interest to me particularly. Perfect Health for Kids, also very relatable to me. The 3 Season Diet and Eat Wheat. So I want to dive into that one also because that one I have a lot of questions about. Um, you were also, let's see, former director of player development for the NBA Brooklyn Nets, applying Ayurvedic principles to the athletes. That is of interest to me also. Um, Goodness, what else? Collaborated with Deepak Chopra, with his U.S. Center training medical doctors in Ayurvedic medicine. More than 7 books, I said. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you're good.
It's an impressive, impressive, impressive resume.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, the beauty of Ayurvedic medicine, which I learned many, many years ago, was that it means the science of life, right? So it's really about how the ancient folks, they understood, circadian rhythms. They knew the
Mhm.
sunrise was important. They knew sleep cycles were important. They knew there was a time to eat, time to rest, time to exercise. They kind of figured all that out.
Right.
And now what I kind of brought to the table, because I was training medical doctors, right? And they needed the science. So I started digging into the modern science to support this ancient wisdom. And that's what I've been doing at lifespa.com for all these years, is writing about ancient medical principles
Right.
that are time tested, but also have science to back them up. Because science alone, unfortunately, as we all know, you can find that coffee's good, coffee's bad, soy's good,
Yeah.
soy's bad, wheat's good, wheat's bad. Really, whatever you want to look at, I can give you studies on both sides of that aisle. So really, you don't know. What diet's good, we don't really know. But if you look at how our ancestors did it for thousands of years, and you have science to
Mhm.
back it up, I feel like that's a good place to start. And that's what we bring to the table. And that's why I love it so much, because, you know, the diet that they talked about thousands of years ago hasn't changed. The herbal recommendations, the weight loss protocols, the arthritic protocols, it hasn't changed. You tell me anything that we've heard in modern medicine the last 20, 30 years that hasn't changed, good luck. Everything is just, oh, that was good, this is better now. Everything, the newer, the better. However, they don't last. And that's where I feel so comfortable telling my patients, hey, this is a protocol that's been around for thousands of years. It's studied and backed up by the science of nature, thousands of years of time-tested wisdom, and we have the modern science to back it up. Let's start there.
Sometimes, there's a question I often ask is how much progress is too much progress? Sometimes just going back to the basics and doing what we've always done, and keeping it simple is some of the best ways. I want to, my big question oftentimes, when I have people on, and especially practitioners on, is why? At what point in, I guess, your life or in your career, did Ayurvedic medicine strike you as, okay, this makes sense, rather than another path of medicine that so many other people choose?
That's a crazy question. And I really, the answer to that,
Hmm.
when I was in India studying their traditional system of medicine,
Yeah.
went for a 4-week vacation to try to learn it, ended up staying there for a year and a half. I met a doctor there who was teaching me this system. They were teaching me how to take the pulse, which was pretty much how every system of medicine, even
Yeah.
Western medicine, took the pulse for years. They now forgot all those kind of art, kind of like slash science techniques. So I'm taking my pulse and learning how to do this. And my teacher said, just write down everything you feel.
Yeah.
And when you, the time of day and everything. So I started writing down the times of day and different things that I felt. And then I asked my teacher, I said, you know what? I noticed that my pulse changes from different times of day. And it was like, why is that? And he went into this whole description of how nature's cycles are changing from one time of day to the other. There's times of day in the morning. We call it the kapha time of day. We have good science now. It shows that the muscles are stronger to dig ditches and plow fields before it gets too hot. We're stronger at that time of day. That's
Hmm.
why 75% of the people who exercise on a regular basis do it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And the middle of the day is when we digest our food. Every culture around the world, except for us, still to this day eats their biggest meal in the middle of the day. We decided to screw that and eat a
Yeah.
big dinner, after the sun sets when there's nobody there to cook the food. But they were in tune with those biological clocks. So I was like, so he says, these are the biological clocks in your body that are in sync with the natural circadian rhythms of nature.
Yeah.
And when you're going in sync, life is like going downstream, like merrily, merrily down the road. I mean, it just makes life easy when you're going in rhythm with nature. We have a really good tendency to go against the current of nature. So for me, I was like, wait a minute. Well, are you telling me that on my own pulse, I can feel those cycles of nature that make the birds fly south and the whales migrate? And I can feel that in my own body? Like they're there? And he
Yeah.
goes, absolutely. And I was like, wow, that blew my mind. So no one's ever asked me that question. And that's really the answer. That's what just like lit
Yeah.
me up. I was like, I need to know this. And what that kind of spawned into was, of course, there's herbs for your digestion and herbs for your arthritis and for your sleep. And there's all this stuff that fix our body.
Right.
But what Ayurveda taught me as well was that the more subtle it is, the more powerful it is. So like your microbiome, can you see those bugs?
No.
But they're governing everything that you think and say and do. The circadian rhythms, can you see them? No.
No.
That's Nobel Prize winning science. And
Yeah.
if you're disrupted in that way, all kinds of health concerns ensue. So what we've done in our culture, we've got everything is like, give me more stimulation from the outside world. And Ayurveda's like, yeah, that's cool. That's a thing. But don't forget the inside. Don't forget the ability to be more self-aware of the most subtle aspects of us, because that's the most powerful part of us. And we've kind of traded that in. And that's kind of also what got me to really respect it, was they were so advanced in the idea of consciousness and spirituality and understanding our inner space, while understanding the need for a healthy body in the world of outer space. It's just, they kind of, understood everything. And it's a 5,000-year-old system. The All Indian Ayurvedic Congress today is the largest medical organization in the world. So if it didn't work, it wouldn't today be the largest medical organization in the world. People stop doing stuff that doesn't work, but it's still happening. And
I wouldn't
like I
say they're
said,
doing that here. Stopping doing things that don't work.
slowly but surely,
Yes,
the
there's a lot of
drugs,
hope. Yes.
yeah.
And it's interesting. The reason I asked you that question is because oftentimes I find the things that we connect with that make sense, we can't really pinpoint why it makes sense. It's more of a feeling. Like, okay, that feels right. That feels like it's always been there and it's here, and I get that. I know I kind of had that feeling when I kind of went on my whole health path. There was always these things there that were just kind of nagging in the background, and until you really implement them and really understand them, then you're like, okay, it was always there all along, and this makes sense. And it's usually more of a spiritual and physical connection. You're just missing kind of that spiritual aspect of the whole health, and your whole self, really. But I find usually the reason you go down these paths is because there's some sort of spiritual connection to that method or that way of living.
You know, you talked about sports and athletics, and my first
Mhm.
book, Body, Mind, and Sport, was written because I had an experience of the runner's high
Mhm.
that lasted for 3 months. And how that happened was I was training for an Ironman, and I went to an Ayurvedic lecture, a meditation Ayurvedic lecture, because it's probably early 1981, something like that.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I went up to the Ayurvedic doctor, and I said, "So I'm training for the Ironman, and what do you think Ayurvedically? Is this a good thing?" And he looked at me and he goes, "What is that?" I had to describe the Ironman, 2.5 mile swim in the ocean, 112
Right.
mile bike, 26 mile run. And he said, "Why do you do that?" And I was like, wow, no one ever asked me that before. So I was like, didn't really know what to say. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you meditate?" And I was like, yes. My mom, got me education in like transcendental meditation when I was 17. And I said, I've been doing it ever since.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Do you sleep when you meditate?" And I was like, deeply. I get this knockout sleep. It's fantastic. And he looked at me again like I was an idiot and said, meditation is a different state than sleep. Sleep means you're exhausted. Meditation is you're resting, but you're alert at the same time. I said, "Ooh, that's not me." And he said, "You're exhausted, dude, and you should probably stop doing all this training because it's way too much."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, what if I were to do all this exercise and not sleep when I meditate?" And he said, "Yeah, that'd be okay." So that was it for me. I
Yeah.
started going to meditation retreats on the weekend, like 2 or 3, and then I went on a 2-week meditation retreat. And this is a true story. And it was actually called Jet Fuel in my book, at the last chapter of the book, what happened to me. And I ended up like having this runner's high zone. Like my best race was my easiest race. I started competing at a significantly higher level. I started winning in my age group and getting medals just blowing my friends when I was in the South Bay in LA at that time,
Yeah.
training and treating a lot of the triathletes in that area, because that was where it kind of all started, a lot of it. And a lot of my friends thought I was on steroids or got a new bike. Some of them
You
learned
were
how to
high on
meditate.
life.
They couldn't believe it. And it was also in my clinical internship, I had a level of bandwidth that was just mind-boggling. Like I didn't have that in the first 4 years. I had it at the end. I was like, "Oh, if I only had this capacity
Right.
all through my school." And for 3 months, I was on a different planet, and then it disappeared. And that's when I started digging into the runner's high, reading books like The Psychic Side of Sports, which is a classic, and ended up going to India because I wanted to understand this kind of full potential thing that
Sure.
Ayurveda talked about. And they came back and we published studies on it. And we studied the difference between mouth breathing,
Yeah.
which you
Yeah.
breathe when a bear's chasing you, which is a
Mhm.
stress state, or breathing through your nose. And we found that when you breathe through your nose, the brain goes into a meditative calm. So
Right.
we proved and published studies in the International Journal of Neuroscience that when you breathe through your nose, when you exercise, your brain goes into a meditative calm. So imagine running as fast as you can, but your brain responding to that as if you were meditating. And I
Hmm.
call that the eye of the storm. The bigger the eye, the more powerful the winds, the more productive you can be. Most of us live in the winds and dodging refrigerators and dealing with the stress, and we recover on the weekends and drink a glass of wine at night to
Right.
recover. But the goal was to hail from that inner experience of peace and calm and build that like a hurricane. The bigger the eye, the more productive we can
Right.
be. And that's the runner's high. And that's what my first book was really all about. And all my books after that were really the same theme. If you're the 3 season diet was living and eating. I know there's
Right.
4 seasons, but there's 3 harvests. And if you eat with the harvest, you're in rhythm. You're getting the right bugs from the right food
Right.
in the right season, because our bugs, according to research at Stanford, the Hadza tribe, hunter-gatherers, their bugs in their gut changed from one season to the next. Ours didn't.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
provided diversity for them. We don't have that. It's an
Wow.
extinction event, our lack of diversity. So everything that I've written about was about how to make it easier to fall into that inner experience of peace and calm. And then from there, you can be way more productive because you're not, dealing with the stress. You're not having to recover from the stress every
Right.
single day. You're living in that that runner's high zone all the time. So that's how it started for me. And everything I write about is really based on that theme. And that silence is our spirituality. It's that self-awareness, that ability to have that knowing, that feeling like this gut feeling thing feels right. That's
Yeah.
part of it.
But it's a matter of getting there. And I kind of want to go back to the athlete piece because again, this really interests me. Um, Obviously, the world that we operate in, but how do you get them there? Because it's almost counterintuitive to athletes to find that piece because they always feel like they have to be achieving and going and pushing. When if you can bring that piece in and kind of conquer the mind, they're kind of unstoppable. But getting them there is the hard part.
I think every athlete knows that we're limited by how much stress we can endure.
Hmm.
And I work with Olympic athletes, Olympic swimmers. Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova did the forward of my book. No one remembers them, but they were like the best tennis players of
Yeah.
all time. With the New Jersey Nets, I worked with so many athletes, you know, and so many swimmers. As a triathlete, I was training with many really top swimmers,
Hmm.
even Olympic swimmers, and they would never do what their coach asked them to do. They would want them to swim 15, 20,000 yards per day. And they were like, man, if I did that, I would be so dead. I'd be so weak. They were overtraining them
Yeah.
on a regular basis because the theory was stress the body as much as you can. It will recover and come back stronger. And it's true. The stress recovery model will build you up.
Hmm.
But as you get older, this is like we train athletes to do that, to get the most out of them in their 20s. By the time they're 25 or 30, they're over the hill.
Right.
This is crazy. We just squeeze as much juice to get the top performing out of them, but with no concern about them for the rest of their life.
Sure.
So what a lot of athletes did, they would just sort of not do what their coach would do. They would go half speed, they would take laps, and the coach wasn't looking. They would have to kind of self adjust for what they knew was right for them. And so the idea is that when you teach them how to create a level of composure and calm and not beat the body up, the body will actually accommodate higher levels of performance. So the way it works, to get into the details, is that if you were to breathe through your nose, and everybody can do this, really simple, and get on a treadmill, it's really easy,
Hmm.
put it at 2 miles an hour, and walk on the treadmill for 5 or 10 minutes, breathing through your nose, deeply in, deeply out, deeply in, deeply out, long and slow and deep, comfortable. Notice there's a natural space at the top and the bottom of each breath. Really tune into that. Then every 15 seconds, increase the elevation by 1 degree. 2 miles an hour, every 15 seconds up 1 degree. And keep asking yourself, with my breathing through my nose, is that space between my breath the same as I go up this treadmill into elevation? As soon as the space between the breaths gets shorter, zero out your treadmill, go back to 0 degrees, reestablish that space between the breath. And once you get the space back, go back up 1 degree every 15 seconds, increase the treadmill elevation. And now you're going to go, so let's say 4 degrees, your space between the breath got short. And next thing you know, you're doing 8 degrees of elevation with the same breath. And then it gets short. Way before your mouth opens, you bail out. And then you go to 12 degrees. I taught this class for 10 years for free. First in North Boulder Park when the book first came out, then I got recruited to do it in a health club, and I had people on a bank of treadmills. I did this. I watched every single person see themselves with the same breath rate have a higher level of performance. Our body can reconvert blood lactate on the muscle site to make energy. But if you push the body into the blood lactate threshold, before you go into anaerobic activity, the body will shunt all that lactate into your cardiovascular system, your heart rate will go up, your breath rate will go up, and the body's now in a fight or flight emergency state. Break your body down to build yourself up is an emergency response. It's a degenerative response. And that's how we live in the stress recovery world. This world was part of your training can be listen to how much is good. As soon as the body says, I'm going in the direction of an emergency where the breath gets a little bit short, bail out, reestablish the calm, And that allows you to breathe deeper into the lower lobes of your lungs where there's more efficient exchange of oxygen in and CO2 out. Because the lungs are gravity fed, right? There's 80% of the oxygen is in the blood and the exchange is in the lower lobes of your lungs, but very few of us breathe into those lower lobes of your lungs.
Right.
So this forces us to become a more efficient breather, and then watching your body increase its performance. And there's no limit to that. And in fact, the runner's high zone, which we studied and proved, was that as you continue to do that after about 4 to 6 weeks, as you increase the exertion, the breath rate stops trying to go faster. It chooses to go longer, slower, and deeper. Now you're in the zone. Now all of a sudden you're running and you're going as fast as you can. Your breath rate's slowing down. You're comfortable. You're in that alpha coherent brainwave state, which we know is the runner's high. And we've replicated that in our studies. That can be a part of your training. Doesn't mean you only train that way, but when you're competing, just go compete. When I was with the New Jersey Nets, they loved this breathing technique for foul shots because they were like freaking out.
Sure. I mean, that adrenaline is just intense.
Right, right, exactly. So it can be used for so many different ways, but learning how to get that what I call respiratory efficiency, where you're actually using the lower lobes of your lungs. One study recently with elite athletes, 91% of them did not have a diaphragm relaxing and contracting fully. And when you breathe long, slow, and deep with your nose, you're forcing that diaphragm to more fully contract and fully relax. And it's critical. So the diaphragm is not just a breathing muscle, it's a major pump for your entire lymphatic system, which is pumping all the fat around your belly. That's what pumps all that lymph. All that fat around your belly is basically congested mesentery or congested lymph. That diaphragm pumps the lymph out of your brain, which dumps 3 pounds of trash, plaque out of your head every year while you sleep.
Wow.
So if you have weak diaphragmatic function, it carries your immune system. I mean, a lot of bad things happen, and it all stems from a diaphragm. But every time that we get stressed out, we change how we breathe.
Shortens, yeah.
And that becomes normal.
Right.
And then another stress comes along, and that becomes normal. Next thing you know, you don't even know it. You're breathing really shallow. You have no access to the lower lobes of your lungs where the parasympathetic rest and rejuvenative nerves live. So you create a vagal response, which is like the buzzword these days, a calm, repair, rejuvenate, digest better response simply by breathing the way we were designed.
Right. Okay. So when you're working with the athletes and implementing these Ayurvedic practices, do you watch them kind of, aha, this really works? Is it something they're kind of like, do some of them accept it more than others? And do you watch that transformation and things kind of click afterwards?
I've taken so many athletes on runs, and
Yeah.
I worked with the MIT rowing team early on in my career, and I would take them and be next to them.
Right.
And every single athlete that I've run with or been next to in some type of workout,
Yeah.
they never tune into that space between the breath getting short. We are conditioned to feel the blood lactate threshold, which is when you go from nose breathing to mouth breathing, emergency, you're ready to go to anaerobic training. That's where we're tuned into we're tuned into that space, that transition. We have no recognition of when the body goes from parasympathetic to sympathetic. And that's what we're teaching you how to do. So when they get that, it's an absolute aha. And then when they watch themselves on the treadmill go from 4 degrees to 12, to 12 degrees, and then they increase the speed to now from 2 miles an hour to 3 miles an hour. And now they're watching every time they take the breathing down and reset it, their capacity increases. The eye of the storm is building more powerful winds. It's the runner's high. The runner's high is my best race, is my easiest race. I experienced it. I knew there was a way to figure out a way to replicate it. And that's exactly what we did in our early studies.
Yeah. It's amazing when those practices click and then you kind of watch this progression of addictiveness, right? They're getting addicted to kind of hacking their bodies a little bit or becoming more in tune with them and not just operating on kind of this mindless level. It's pretty great to watch.
The one caveat is I always tell them is be prepared to suffocate because most of us really stink
Yeah,
at breathing through our nose. We
sure.
just haven't used it at all.
Right.
And this is such an important apparatus for
Mm,
breathing, for smelling, and it's really just dormant for most people.
right.
Uh, there was a recent study showing that if you actually change the smells that you smell every 2 hours, it actually exercises your olfactory plate in your brain. Again, using your
Interesting.
nose,
Yeah.
increases, reduces the cognitive decline by 226%.
Wow.
Nothing does that. So we just don't use this thing. And the way to start, obviously smelling different things, aromatherapy oil, all really important to change them and keep exercising your olfactory, your smelling ability, but also breathing through your nose is a part of that process. We are born as what are called obligate nose breathers,
Mm-hmm.
which means like a horse, they can't breathe through their mouth, they have to breathe through their nose. And they're pretty good athletes, I'd say.
Yeah.
We're designed the same way, but we quickly, because of stress, which is our world's full of, you
Yeah.
know, we quickly trade that in for a mouth breathing style of breathing.
Interesting. Interesting. I like the cognitive aspect of it because I feel like the more stressed our world gets, kind of that cognitive ability you see reducing just as a whole. And to know that there are practices in place that can help with that, I think is important. And then the topic of just longevity. I know that's an important topic in my house. My husband and I talk about it all the time. Anything that we can do to elevate our lives or longevity is important and we try to put into practice. So, Ayurvedic medicine and longevity, what are we looking at as far as practices there?
But the cool thing about Ayurveda is one of the main branches of Ayurveda was completely dedicated to longevity.
Hmm.
So, and so much of the biohacking we see today has taken little pieces of this kind of ancient wisdom and then
Yeah.
kind of biohacking it. And which is fine and it works, but there's so much more to this understanding than just the little snippets
Hmm.
and understanding, the real purpose of longevity was not to just live a long life.
Right.
The
But to be
real
vital.
purpose to be vital, but also to, there was a study done at UCLA, and they found that as we age, we're actually more, we all want to find God before it's too late. That's the kind of thing that happens when you get older. But it's not just that we have a desire to become more spiritual. An ability, a higher sensitivity, more wisdom, more capacity to be spiritual. And this is an Ayurvedic concept. They understood that there are cycles of life. Your first part of life when you're young and you're 18, you're just physical and
Yeah.
just growing up and very elastic and you
Hmm.
can break records and such. In the middle of your life, raise your kids, make a lot of money, hopefully take care of your family, maybe do something good in the world.
Yeah.
In the last part of your life, you have wisdom. We call it the wisdom years. So I always say you could be wise or dumb.
Yeah.
Well, wisdom. But the idea is that's a time where the centenarians, for example, are revered in their cultures.
Yeah.
That was the plan, that this wisdom would then be passed on to the grandkids and help, raise a more productive culture over time. Of course, that's been thrown out the window in our culture. But the idea is that we have the ability to, in a way, thin the veil between the physical and the spiritual. I mean, most people believe that when we die, there's a soul or a spirit, right?
Hmm.
Well, they were like, yeah, that's true, but you don't have to die to figure that out. Most of us don't really know for sure that we're a spirit until we die. They're like, oh, I have a near-death experience, and I think that there's a soul because that person had that experience.
Right.
But they're like, by being more self-aware of the subtle and practicing that as you're going through life, and particularly in the last third of your life, you have that ability to really kind of raise your self-awareness, raise your consciousness, and really become, create that eye of the storm to such a way that you become sort of able to experience a level of joy and contentment and have a level of wisdom that you just don't have when you're just trying to make a living in that part of your life. So there was a reason why we needed to live a long life, was because
Yeah.
it took a lot of time to figure out how to be that subtle and be that aware, which is why if you look at the old pictures of the saints, so they're all like really old, right?
Yeah.
And they're carrying, real long hair and beards and stuff. And it was sort of like that was the idea. That's when they created the wisdom and the desire. And now studies show the capacity to be more spiritual. So that was kind of cool that Ayurveda understood that. But there are so many factors about how to live your life, in a healthy, content way, but
Right.
also have a really healthy body. And so much of that had to do with aligning your body with the natural rhythms. And
Mhm.
Ayurveda said that 80% of all disease comes from a breakdown in your digestive system. And what we have today, let's just kind of hack the biohacking world for a minute.
Okay.
They're all about eating a keto diet or eating a carnivore diet or eating a no carb diet or just taking oxalates and nitrates and goitrogens and lectins and phytic acids and take them out of your diet. Don't eat any of those things. Eat meat
Right.
and rice or vegetables, and that's it. I call that bubble wrapping your diet.
Hmm.
Studies show that when you actually, let's just take wheat, for example. I did write a book called Eat Wheat, and it wasn't
Yes.
that I'm
Yes. And I'm glad we're getting into this. Okay.
I wanted people to understand that when you can't digest a certain food, it may not be the food. Yeah, there's toxins and pesticides on our food. That's got to go for sure. But wheat itself, and even if it was hybridized a little bit, is still very digestible. And you can get really good heirloom grain
Hmm.
in America, and that's what we do. But they're seasonal. They didn't eat wheat every day of the year because it didn't exist every day of the
Right.
year,
Right. Right.
right? And when there was a study done when people eat wheat compared to people who are gluten-free but don't have to be, they're not celiac, which is a lot of people.
Hmm.
They just don't feel good eating the wheat, so they stop
Hmm.
eating it. Studies show that those people have 4 times, who are eating the wheat but don't have to be, 4 times more mercury in their blood than the people who are eating the wheat, significantly less good bugs, more bad bugs, and less killer T cells than the people who are eating wheat on a regular basis. The harder to digest foods, the oxalates, the
Yeah.
nitrates, the goitrogens, the phytic acid lectins, which are in tomatoes and zucchini, which, come on, right? Are we
Right.
going to take all that out of our diet?
No.
Our ancestors ate a lot of foods that weren't wonderful. And those foods that are harder to digest create hormesis, a little bit of irritation. And the reason why you and I have gut immunity,
Hmm.
70% of our immune response, is because we ate those foods all the time in our life.
Right.
Now we're taking them out of the diet and we have no reason for gut immunity. I'll give you another example real quick. Amish kids who do traditional dairy farming generally.
Yes.
The kids run barefoot in the barns. They have cows as pets. Those kids have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet.
So I
They're,
hope somebody is out there studying Amish kids. Because it's always fascinating to me when some of these numbers come out or some of these statistics come out, and it's fascinating.
so their genetic cousins were called Hutterites, came from the same valley in Switzerland, same genetics.
Yeah.
They have the highest rates of asthma on the planet. They came and became sterile farmers, everything stainless steel, kind of the American way.
Yeah.
How does this make any sense?
Sure.
Great study pool, right? They found that they measured the dust in the barns that these kids were breathing, the Amish kids,
Yeah.
and it was creating a hormesis or emetic irritation of the respiratory mucosa that triggered an immune response
Hmm.
against asthma. We can't bubble wrap our environment. We
Right.
can't bubble wrap our diet. Otherwise, you don't need, the body thinks, I don't need an immune response, and therefore you don't have one.
Right.
So these harder to digest foods are a canary in the coal mine. When you can't
Hmm.
eat wheat, you're not seeing you feel bad. Okay, let's go back and find out what part of your digestive system is broken. We have a digestive health quiz that you can take and find out what part of your digestion is broken. And that was really the whole point of Eat Wheat, was say,
Right.
hey, Is it your stomach, lack of production of acid? Is it your liver gallbladder
Okay.
issue? Is it a pancreatitis enzyme issue? Is it intestinal skin lining, the lymph around your gut? Where is your digestive problem? And let's fix it with herbs and foods, and then go back and begin to reintroduce those challenging foods into your
Yeah.
diet again because they're critical for our longevity
Okay.
because your longevity depends on an immune system.
So let me then a natural transition into this question. What does Ayurveda say about autoimmune diseases?
Great question. And I'll give you the science for that.
Okay.
There is a system in your brain called the lymphatic system and the
Mhm.
glymphatic system, and they both dump about 3 pounds of trash toxins out of your head through
Yeah.
those lymphatic channels. So your lymph system in your body trying to do three things. One, take out the trash from every cell of your body, carry your immune system, and deliver fat as energy. So that kind of baseline energy in your body.
Right.
So if your brain lymphatic system is congested, which they only discovered that at the University of Virginia about 20 years ago, and
Okay.
since then, we've been doing a lot of research on it. Now, Ayurvedic medicine talked about the brain lymphatic system thousands of years ago. I don't know how they knew it was there. I really
Yeah.
don't. But they talked about it. And they talked about ways to detoxify it. They called it
Interesting.
tarpaka kapha, which meant to both detoxify, like a brainwashing fluid,
Yeah.
and it records old emotional trauma. Sort of like if you went into a cave when you were 10 and a bear chased you out and almost
Yes.
killed you. You could be 99 years old. You know that cave. You're never going in it. It's a memory for species survival.
Yeah.
And that can hold on to old emotional trauma that we don't really need to hold on to.
Right.
So they were all over that thousands of years ago. The traumas can happen and we need to
That's
detox.
amazing to me.
So now science shows that congestion of the brain lymph and lymphatic systems are linked to
Hmm.
anxiety, depression, cognitive decline,
Right.
inflammation, poor sleep, infection, and autoimmune concerns, which means if your
Yeah.
master computer can't get its trash out, and that's partly because the pump for that is your diaphragm, and most
Right.
people don't breathe, that the brain lymphatic system, the master computer won't know how many fire trucks to send to the immune events somewhere on Main
Yeah.
Street in your body. It'll send too many or too few, and too many is an autoimmune response.
Hmm.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
You
That was going
fix
to
the
be my next
lymphatic,
question.
you fix the lymphatic system by
Yeah.
detoxifying the brain lymph, but tracking it all the way to its upstream cause. And that is in your digestion. And studies show, and I'll quote the study right now, that if you don't digest your proteins and fats, your wheats, your nuts, your dairy, the environmental pollutants,
Yeah.
which are loaded with heavy fat soluble chemicals, they will go into your intestinal tract. This is the quote from the study. Too big as a molecule to get into your blood and nourish you, they're going to get uptaken into the garbage can, which is
Right.
the lymphatic collecting ducts in your gut, of which the lion's share of it is around your belly. That's your gut
Hmm.
immunity. And that gets into the lymph under your skin, skin associated lymph,
Sure.
brain lymph and lymph, respiratory lymph. And now your ability to carry immunity and get the trash out is severely compromised. And that tracks back to your digestion. So what Ayurveda said, well, let's go back and fix the digestive pieces. Let's detoxify the lymph. Let's get your breathing. Let's detoxify the brain. And all of a sudden, we're treating causative issues.
So at Life Spa, are these the type of patients that you're seeing
Oh,
at the
yeah.
moment? Because I feel like there's not a woman in my life. I feel like there are very few that don't have some sort of either digestive issue, autoimmune issue, especially autoimmune. So I'm almost 43. So you can think about my friend group around the same age, some older, some younger. But it's this chronic issue that we can't seem to get a handle on, right? And, doing all of the things that you think you're supposed to do, mind body connection, gut health, all of it. And like finding that perfect formula for someone like me is difficult.
So what's the main issue? Just
Well, I guess for me in particular is autoimmune. And it's interesting. I have antibodies for both Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. I tend towards like a hypo response. I've got friends with rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis,
right.
other thyroid. It's kind of all. most of them with gut issues, gut related issues. It's
So,
interesting.
so yeah.
Hormone issues.
So I'll tell you a quick story. There's first of all those autoimmune issues, we want to look at brain lymph,
Yeah,
breathing, and digestion. We
sure.
want to track that pathway. So, and there's a treatment in Ayurvedic medicine called nausea, where you sniff a medicated oil up
Hmm.
into the upper sinuses and up into the sagittal sinus where the arachnoid space drains the brain lymphatic system. And that's how they created a technique to help drain it. Studies even show even giving yourself a vigorous head massage
Yeah.
increase the flow of the brain lymphatic system on the other side of your skull. And I wrote an article about
Interesting.
head massage and the value of that.
Okay.
But this other treatment called nausea is something that we do. And, I administered Ayurvedic in retreat detox therapies for 26 years and closed my practice in 2013. Those treatments closed that and
Yeah.
started doing teaching. But during that time, I had a patient who came to me with a goiter in her neck,
Mm-hmm.
the size of a grapefruit. And don't
Wow.
forget that before Hakuro Hashimoto got hyperthyroid or hypothyroid issues or autoimmune thyroid named after him,
Mm-hmm.
it was called thyroiditis lymphomatosa or thyroiditis lymphadenitis. It was always called a lymphatic condition because studies show that the thyroid drains into the cervical lymph. And if that's not draining, thyroid is going to get congested. And they stuck it in your neck because it communicates between the higher and lower centers. And if this gets botched up or congested,
Right.
then they're going to get an over or underzealous immune reaction. That's an autoimmune concern, right?
This is interesting to me because as much as I've read about these conditions, I have never ever heard that. And that
No, but
makes so much sense.
right.
Um, wow. Okay. All right. This is something to work with for sure.
So, so there's many reasons why. I mean, some people might just have a really bad digestive system. They
Right.
can't eat wheat or dairy, or they're food intolerant or chemical intolerant. That deals with digestion, and it deals with a reboot of your digestion, and maybe even a detox. Like we have
Mhm.
Ayurvedic cleanses not just to detoxify you, because
Right.
most cleanses just clean you out, but never ask the question why you got toxic in the first place. And your digestive strength is linked to your ability to detoxify. So if you can't eat wheat, dairy, nuts, seeds, lectins, goitrogens, all that stuff, you're not going to detoxify well either. And that's going to create a lot of toxicity in your lymph, compromise immunity, and set you up for this whole process.
Well, and that was
So,
something that I learned kind of in my process of healing is that I do not detoxify normally. And it's kind of an issue with all of my children as well.
yeah.
And so, we focus a lot on what we put in, and just because there is that knowledge, um, input equals output, and we found it very, very, very helpful for sure for all of us. But yes, that was a big concern of mine, and it was kind of a big aha moment for me.
There was a period of time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where every one of my patients had MTHFR,
Yeah.
right? Nobody could
That would
detoxify.
it's a variation. It is not MTHFR. It's another couple of gene SNPs, and I wish I could remember them. It's been a while since I looked at my DNA panel. But my children also. So I'm guessing my husband does too because they had two SNPs. But
And if you look at
yes,
all the solutions for those different kinds of SNPs, it's really, make sure you're getting folate, make sure you're getting B12, and make sure you're eating clean, recognizable, non-processed, non-toxic diet. And pretty much you're going to get covered. But you also have to realize that underlying digestive system, if it's broken
yeah,
down, that is going to set you up for the accumulation of undigested proteins and fats, which are going to go into your lymph and create an immune response in your lymphatic system, a hypersensitive histamine response, and that's going to set you up for all the symptoms, whether they can be. We have a lymph quiz you can take as well, and you ask you all these questions about your lymph, like, do your rings get tight? Do you break out? Do you have extra weight around your belly? Are you tired or fatigued? Do you have pain that moves around your body from
yeah.
one joint to the next? Do you have headaches or migraine headaches? Do you have brain fog? Do you have food intolerances? The list goes on and on and on. These are all signs that you're not taking the trash out. And it's not necessarily, the genetic code has so many backup systems
Sure.
that it's sort of, the more current thinking is, yeah, you have these gene SNPs, but your body's got backup systems. The real issue is a broken or potentially a specific breakdown in some aspect of your digestion or detox pathways. And that's something that we should all be thinking about doing, because that gets us back in the game. We're doing it we're not depending on a pill or a powder. We're actually back eating a variety of foods, thinking about eating those foods in a seasonal way. So your microbes are changing from one season to the next. Your fuel supply is changing from one season to the next. We have bacteria deets that are predominant in the hunter-gatherer's guts in the fall for eating sugar and fruits and grains and starches more effectively. That's the fuel supply for the fall, getting ready for winter. But in the spring, their gut bugs were completely different. They were actinobacteria for getting fuel from fat and more ability to digest fiber. So our fuel supply historically changed. But now in America, we eat the same food all day long, or I go on keto all year long, or I go on carnivore all year long, where there was a keto time of the year, and it was called the spring, when there was no pasta and no pizza being harvested at all, right? It was a low carb time of the year where you were forced to burn your own fat for fuel, the natural occurring ketogenic diet. And if you were going to eat anything, you probably hunted. And there was, again, more of those high fat organ meats, higher fat time of the year. But come summer, I mean, our ancestors knew that if they hunted in the summer when they couldn't eat the food out of their garden fast enough, they would overhunt, there'd be nothing to hunt in the winter, and they would starve to death. And many cultures did that. Easter Island, perfect example.
Yeah.
Even in Tahiti, the king of French Polynesia down there, he knew that there were times of scarcity and times of feasting. And he had specific rules where you weren't allowed to eat certain foods at different times of the year, because if they ate everything they wanted to eat whenever they wanted to eat it,
You would set yourself up for failure. Yeah.
Right. So there were seasonal changes, right? We have to follow them.
So you're saying the solution is reconnect with self, reconnect with the spiritual world, reconnect with the land and the way the rhythms of the earth are operating. And it's that simple.
And troubleshoot your digestion.
Yeah.
Make sure that if you have an issue with fried food, right?
Yeah.
And it sits in your stomach, gives you heartburn, you probably have a liver,
It's a
gallbladder,
signal.
bile sludge issue that needs to get fixed. Don't just, people say, I don't eat that stuff. I go, great, that's not good for you, but you should be able to. You did it when you were 18 like crazy, but now you can't. Something's wrong with your digestive system. Of course, we don't want to eat those foods regularly, but you sure should be able to, because if you can't digest them, you can't detoxify them. And our world, according to the EPA, in America, we dump 70 million tons of toxic chemicals in our atmosphere every year, which filters down to everything we put in our mouth. And we have the ability, and we can digest and detoxify them. Right. But if your digestion is broken down, those toxins are not going to be detoxified. They're going to store in your brain and your fat tissues for
Right. And see, this is where I get really frustrated, I guess, is because we have solutions that I think we're unwilling to implement. And as fast as I would like to see change, because I don't want to have to be dealing with some of the issues that I've had to deal with in the last 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. It's been 10 years since I was diagnosed and kind of started down this path. I don't want my children, to have to deal with these things and their children and etc. Where do you see, I guess, is there hope that, things can kind of be cleaned up a little bit?
Absolutely, there's hope. And I see that all the time. I treat so many autoimmune concerns because it's like the most like metabolic syndrome is sort of the epidemic of our time. I had a patient who came to me and she had that goiter in her neck. And I gave her, she was doing our detox, kind of our Ayurvedic cleanses. And they're free on my website. You can learn more about how to do them. And but we also gave her this treatment where we actually do a vigorous head massage and a eucalyptus steam. And then we sniff these medicated oils up into your sagittal sinus that creates a brain lymphatic dump. Yeah. After her third treatment, she said, and she was writing in her journal, She was in retreat with us.
Yeah.
And she said that I had this epiphany where I was watching myself being abused when I was 14 years old. And I swear to you, I haven't thought about that in decades and decades. I completely blocked it out of my mind. But what I was struck by was not that that event was so bad, obviously not great, but I
Right.
was struck by my life before the event. I was this happy-go-lucky kid.
Mm.
Then that event happened, and I became something different. I became a hyper vigilant, straight A student, 90-hour-a-week corporate executive with a color coded closet, perfect dress, perfect car. Anybody came to our house,
Control.
she's going to clean for 3 hours, you know? And she looked at her life and she had already burned out her blood sugar in her adrenals. She had chronic
Yeah.
fatigue and blood sugar issues. And she goes, now my thyroid's blowing up. And I looked at my life after and before, and she looked at that event and she said, it wasn't great. It was bad, but it wasn't worth 25 years of my life.
Right.
So she said she was able to just drop it. In that week of her detox,
Hmm.
the thyroid gorder disappeared. Her thyroid number, she had hyperthyroid, came down 200 points. Within 9 months, her thyroid completely normalized. 5 years later, I saw her at a Christmas party in Denver, and she came running up to me with two little kids. She wanted me to meet
Oh,
because they were
she
not
had children.
happening
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah.
And so when I closed my clinic, that was the first article and video that I put out so people can learn how to do that at home.
Wow.
Because that's the 1,000-year-old treatment to clean out the brain lymph, which they talked about as a way to get rid of old emotional trauma,
Gonna say
which
it's
we
an
all
emotional
have.
detox as much as it is anything.
You bet. Yeah.
There's a
So that's the
story.
other piece. Yeah. But both the physical and the emotional, you have to look at all, you have to pull all those
Yeah.
strings.
It's interesting. And I don't remember if I've told it on this podcast or if it's clients I've talked to. I can't remember, but um, there's a story that I always tell. I was probably 3 or 4 years into kind of my healing process, and I had gone to um, it was a yoga nidra group session, and it was on my birthday of all times. It was on my birthday. I just went. And I went into this meditation and I wasn't particularly stressed about anything. There was nothing on my mind. I wasn't thinking much about anything. And I came out of that meditation completely bawling my eyes out. And I had no idea. I didn't understand why. I don't know where it came from. I don't even know what was coming out, but it was obviously something that needed to. And it's something that I explain to clients as this need or this necessity to purge emotions that we sometimes we don't even know we're holding on to. And I think that's when like my aha moment was, wow, there's some deep-seated things in there that I didn't even know needed to come out. That they had manifested into kind of like perfectionist tendency, kind of this self-torture, this pressure I would put on myself for absolutely no reason. And I didn't understand why until that until that stuff started coming up for reasons I didn't understand at the time.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you experienced that. That's the whole idea of the eye of the storm. It's sort of
Hmm.
like when you take a lake that's got waves
Right,
crashing and you calm the lake down,
right.
you still the lake, and now you can see the body can see what's
Exactly.
down there at the bottom. And when the body becomes aware of a
Right.
problem as a problem, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional, it can actually then elicit a healing response. So that's why, meditation and yoga and breathing, pranayama techniques, which prana means breath, yam means to hold, pause, or extend the breath. And when you
Yeah.
slow the breath down, you create an effect which is sometimes called intermittent hypoxia, which dramatically enhances neuroplasticity, which
Wow.
means changing those old emotional patterns of your
Right.
brain. That's what it was for, because everybody knows, like life was as a kid, we all had to create some version of a personality to survive.
Sure.
And that's not necessarily who we truly are, it's who we had to become to survive. And
Right.
Ayurveda is like, how do we become conscious? They knew, studies show today that 95% of what we think and say and do as adults come from impressions from the first 5 years of life. That's not conscious, that's
Right.
unconscious. So what you did when you did the yoga nidra, you shedded a lot of old emotional baggage
Yes.
and one step closer to being conscious. It was beautiful.
Yes, and it's been a crazy journey ever since. And when you were talking about kind of that spiritual awakening as you kind of get older, that's kind of the phase of life I'm currently in. And I've never experienced anything quite like it. And I'm actually really enjoying this phase of life. And it's funny to me, this societal push to not age or not really revere certain stages of life or wisdom or anything like that. It's always made no sense to me. Um, I I look forward to that point of just complete awareness and acceptance and all of that. It's been really joyful, really, really joyful.
It's important to understand that you're so right, because as we age,
Hmm.
we change.
Right.
We have requirements as we get older for more protein. Our metabolic system is completely different, and everybody's trying to kind of amp up their NAD levels to have the ATP revving like a 20-year-old. Well, the reason why our metabolism in part slows down as we age is to protect us from accelerated unwanted growth in our body, like
Mm.
cancers, things like that. So, there was studies on NMN, for example, and nicotinic riboside, all these NAD precursors, which are the rage out there.
Hmm.
And there are studies show that if you have a cancer in your body, that more NAD can actually stimulate that cancer growth. So everybody's just taking it willy-nilly, but the
Oh
science
no,
is
without.
right? So we have to be careful. We have to be careful not to just like jump on the latest
Right.
bandwagon. We want to age gracefully. Like
Sure.
I'm going to be turning 69 this weekend, and I've been practicing these really. I feel so grateful to have learned Ayurvedic
Right.
medicine, a really time-tested wisdom that's carried me to be, I feel, as healthy as I could be at this
Sure.
age, right?
Right.
And and another thing I think I want to say is that when in my practice, and maybe you experience this too, but everybody comes into my office with high cholesterol, and every doctor wants to put them on a statin. They have metabolic syndrome or blood sugar or prediabetes. It's just like the epidemic of our time. And so I did a research dive into the cause of metabolic syndrome, every aspect: high cholesterol, high blood sugar, high blood
Yeah.
pressure, high blood sugar, and every one of those were linked to stress. Every one of them.
Shocker.
And then I said, well, what if I look at meditation as like a stress reduction technique?
Yeah.
Study after study after study, lowers meditation, lowers cholesterol, lowers blood sugar. Every one of those, I was going like, the elephant in the room here is this crazy, revved up, overstimulated
Right.
world we live in.
Hmm.
And we really do need to take time to turn the volume down, either meditate or go into the forest and just chill and
Yeah.
dip the cloth into the dye of our own science, like you did yoga nidra,
Yeah.
and the gut calm. And in that calm, the body can self-heal. We need to give the body that time.
Right.
And once you dip there, the bigger the winds, the bigger the calm, the more powerful the winds. I'm not saying, oh, you should only meditate and live in a bubble and don't do anything. No, I feel we're unlimited in potential.
Right.
But if you're out there in the winds of the storm, you're going to get clobbered. But if you can create that calm and function from the hail from that calm, man, you're invincible. It's like a crazy, crazy way to live your life.
Right. And I think the biggest piece of it is we get addicted to our stress. So really kind of breaking that bond. And I see it all the time. I see it, with clients I work with, I see it in my friend group, I see it even in my own family. Again, my husband's a college basketball coach, and it's a very high stress world at the moment. Um, and it's really difficult to break that bond of stress addiction because it is an addiction. But to be able to break it, it feels almost unnatural to not have that little friend that's torturing you in the background.
Yeah, we are so addicted to the dopamine response.
Mhm.
So our our world has created stimulation from the outside, and that makes us happy or sad or up or down, but it's all coming from the outside in.
Right.
And then we've completely lost access to having joy and love and kindness for no reason, because it's our nature to do that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you want to only be kind of inner space.
Sure.
You want 200% of life. You want 100% out there in the world, knocking it out
Yeah.
of the park. but you want to also have 100% coming from the inside out. So who you are is allowed to be expressed and not create a version of yourself that you think everybody out there is going to like. Because that's what we do most of the time.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting, and that's something I really wanted to touch on with you because I think I read maybe it's something you wrote about not having your true voice or not expressing your true voice and kind of that lending itself to this dis-ease within yourself and not being really connected or expressing what you need to express, kind of not living this whole life if you can't express who you really are.
It's such a big, important piece of the puzzle,
Hmm.
and I think as you sort of, I call it pulling back the bow, right?
Yeah.
If you pull back the bow, and there's like that kudo, that kind of Japanese kind of martial art,
Yeah.
and there's one in Ayurveda as well. You pull back the bow and you're moving the arrow and you shoot it, take action from that place, you're never going to find your arrow because your brain's wobbling like crazy, right? But
Right.
if you pull back the bow and hold it perfectly still and then take action, it's transformational. So
Hmm.
most of us aren't taking action from a calm place. We're taking it from the winds of the storm. And we allow
Chaotic.
yeah, and we allow all those old emotional patterns we created as children to still be projecting on the screen all day long, every day. And we see it, most of us, when we go home for the holidays and start dealing with our parents and we start getting stressed out. We're like, what is going on here? It just triggers all those things. So
Right.
the idea is to actually have a level of self-awareness where you can realize and watch yourself engaging in behavior that's trying to, make them like us, or if
Yeah.
your mom's trying to teach you how to cook and it's driving you crazy, all your mom's really trying to do is get you to approve of her and like her and tell her how wonderful and smart she is.
Yeah.
But we are reacting to the version of her, which is trying to get you to like her, with a version of you that's based on a version of her that's not even her. Because she's
Right.
trying to manipulate you to like her. So you're
Right.
not connecting with that version because it's not really her. And it's like
Right.
makes you kind of, I don't want to deal with that, mom. Let's stop.
Yeah.
Where if you would just both allow yourself to be willing to let something more delicate and vulnerable out.
Hmm.
There's a really cool study that showed that when people give in a eudaimonic way, a
Hmm.
loving, giving, caring way, which means I don't want anything in return, just the gestalt of giving,
Yeah.
versus giving in a hedonistic way where I want you to like me and approve of me and appreciate me. When they gave a gift in a hedonistic way, it negatively affected the genetic code of the people they were giving it to and your own genetic code. When they gave without any expectation to get anything in return, just for the love of giving,
Yeah.
it changed in a positive way their genetic code. So they can tell if you're just trying to manipulate them to like you. They can tell.
Sure.
So the idea is just like drop in, take a risk to be yourself, vulnerable, delicate, and yes, even the most powerful version of yourself. And that comes by becoming more still every once in a while, where you start to see more clearly door number one, which is the thing you've been
Right.
doing your whole life, going down the same road, doing the same dumb stuff. But as you become more self-aware, you start seeing there's another door there. There's door number two. And I
Right.
can take this one to let something out and love and give and care fully through the window of compassion for why they're crazy, or understanding for why they're doing that, as opposed to judgment, and let something more beautiful and more real out. And those game-changing techniques.
And it's interesting. You can feel that energy. It's something that's almost tangible. You know when somebody's being authentic, and you know when there's kind of a motive behind it. And I think that's why, there's this draw to people who are doing something out of genuine feeling and kindness versus an agenda. I mean, you can almost see it.
It's backed by good science now. So we
Yeah.
know that that's true, but we're so addicted to the dopamine
Yeah.
response that we're going to do everything we can to get it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get that response, which includes judging people and getting them to be, I want you to be the way I want you to be, so I get that good feeling,
Sure.
right? And
Sure.
that's sort of a major problem. There was another really cool study where they were measuring a bunch of women in a shoe store and they were buying shoes and they were trying on these shoes and they were measuring their dopamine levels while they were trying on these shoes. And they were going up and up and up and up,
Yeah.
getting this reward high. They were really high. They swipe their card, bought the shoes, they walk out into the mall, and their dopamines crash. And they're like, ah. And then they started thinking, how can I get back on that mountain again? And they're thinking, well, I saw a Starbucks when we came in. There was a Mrs. Fields chocolate chip cookies. There was a Cinnabon, and now they're off to the next dopamine
Interesting.
hit. Yeah, yeah. So we live on that roller coaster ride of how we can get stimulated from the outside world.
Yeah.
To be weatherproof from that, you got to start taking risks to be loving, joyful, and kind
Right.
for no reason, and let
Hmm.
all the trash go by.
Yeah. Easier said than done,
Yeah,
and I think it's really difficult to teach that sometimes if the person on the other end is not willing to look at the world that way. And that's kind of, what I've found, I guess, in my own space is trying to explain why we live the way that we do or why we think the way that we do when really it really doesn't matter. You know, I can't force you to think like me or operate like me, but man, am I enjoying it over here.
yeah. One of my favorite sayings that Mr. Rogers picked up
Mhm.
was a book written by um, Henry James
Mm.
in the early 1900s. And it was like the three most important things that a human being can do. Number one, first thing, be
Yeah,
kind.
sure.
And the second most important thing, be kind. And the
Right.
third most important thing, be kind. And when you dissect that, like three
Yeah.
levels of be kind, it's almost like, what am I going to be, a doormat? Let people just roll over me?
Right.
No, what it really means is that no one has the power to take your joy, your happiness
Right.
away. And
Exactly.
the only reason why you would not be kind is if someone took that away from you, and no one has that power. So learning
Yep.
how to maintain that power and be kind, be kind, be kind is a cool life journey.
It's self-control. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to stop, even though I feel like we could keep going. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do. If anybody wants to find you or Life Spa, your work, where can we find that?
Yeah, at lifespa.com, there's about 1,500 articles, all for free with videos,
Wow.
all ancient wisdom with modern science, all well,
Okay.
evidence-based. So you can kind of type in your health concern, take all of our health quizzes and figure out what's wrong with you so you can actually, take care of yourself, from a causative place. Of course, we have a newsletter there where you can sign up and get all of our latest research and that I'm writing. I write about 3 articles a week, and we're constantly
Wow.
publishing them about ancient wisdom, modern science, and we also have an Ayurvedic store. I've been formulating Ayurvedic herbs and skincare, and all our books and stuff are there as well. And
Wonderful.
of course, I'm on all the social channels. You can just type in
Okay.
my name or Life Spa. Usually, you'll find me on social somewhere.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dr. John Douillard. I look forward to actually participating in this myself, given everything that we've talked about. So I will add all of that to the show notes, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work.
Thanks, Brandy. This was really great. I had a joy. You asked so many great questions. This is really cool. I hope people really enjoy this podcast. I know I
I'm
sure
sure
did.
they will. All right. Thanks, Dr. John.
Welcome.